And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
All right, everybody. Eric Dim, your most complaint cop, NYPD. This is New York's finest retired unfiltered podcast. And along with me is the founder and the co-host of the podcast, John McCarry, retired lieutenant. We got a great guest for you here today, Sam Antar, the former chief financial officer to Crazy Eddie's, turned to convicted felon, now whitecollarfraud.com. Sam Antar, it's a pleasure to have you. Quite interesting guest. People are going to see that. You're a straight shooter. And pretty intelligent guy too. So, Sam, let's just start out. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, what your studies were, your education level, how you got into this business with Crazy Eddie's, and how you turned to convicted felon.
I started working at Crazy Eddie's when I was 14 years old, and Crazy Eddie had started 2 years prior. It was fraud from day one, garden variety fraud that escalated as the years went on and we got more sophisticated. Initially, we were just garden variety tax evaders and, taking advantage of inflated inflated insurance claims. And then the family decided that, they wanted to get into more sophisticated stuff going forward, but you couldn't bring this stuff outside the family. So they encouraged me to go to college and major in accounting, which I did at Brewer College. And they also encouraged me to get the best education possible. And I did. I got a 4.0 index in accounting and a 3.7 index overall. And I took the CPA exam. 80% of the people used to fail every sitting of the CPA exam. I passed the 4 parts on the first try with a 90 average. The passing grade was 75. And most of the people that passed with a 75 average. I was a top 1% on the CPA exam because my family believed that I should not cheat myself out of getting a good education. If I would cheat in school, how can I help them? How can I be an effective fraudster? So as time went on, I had to also get my experience to get my CPA license after I passed the CPA exam, and I worked for the accounting firm that was auditing Crazy Eddie's books. It was called Penn and Horowitz. Crazy Eddie was 40% of their revenues. I was not supposed to be working on Crazy Eddie's audits, but invariably, with a small accounting firm and one monster being 40% of your revenues, I was helping audit Crazy Eddie's books. Eventually, they decided to go public, um, and we transitioned away from income tax evasion to securities fraud. I'll give you an idea. You get a bigger bang. You get a bigger bang for the buck. Overstating your profits as a public company and overpaying your taxes than understating your profits as a private company and evading your taxes. I'll give you an idea, just a small example. If I skim $1 million and the tax rate is 40%, I'm saving 400,000 in taxes, right? Simple math. But let's say I inflate my profits by the same $1 million. I'm overpaying 400 in taxes, but I still have an after-tax inflated income of $600,000. But stocks trade at a multiple of earnings. So if I inflate my after-tax income by $600,000, I can gain 20 or $30 million in market value, even though I overpaid on my taxes by $400,000. So what we did was we gradually reduced our skimming in the years prior to going public. And as a result, we were reporting more earnings rather than making more money. And that created a growth curve, which MBAs adore. These kids out of college, all they know is lines and shit like that, whatever. So Crazy Eddie looked like it was a growth company prior to going public. And, eventually I became the CFO of the company after I got my experience requirements done with Penn and Horowitz. And I eventually became the CFO of Crazy Eddie's. Now, after Penn and Horowitz and right before going public, they switched to a major accounting firm known as main herdman. Today it's known as KPMG. It's one of the big four. And I had to, I had to work with them after the company went public. Now, one of the things that we did after the company went public was something known as the Panama Pump. Um, Under the Panama Pump scheme, we took the money that we previously skimmed that was in Israel and put it back into Crazy Eddie's. In other words, the reverse of skimming. Why? Goes back to the old rules. When we skimmed, if we skimmed 1 million, we underpaid on taxes on them. We underpaid if we skimmed 1 million, we underpaid taxes by $400,000. We evaded. But if we put the money back in and we pay those taxes back, we have $600,000 in inflated net income and $20 million or $30 million in market value. It's known as the Panama Pump Scheme. And I was the architect behind it. And the feds, even when they started investigating Crazy, they didn't know anything about the scheme. In fact, when I first told them about it, 2 years after the investigation started, when they finally flipped me, they didn't believe it. It took them 9 months to be able to figure it out. But that was the Panama Pump Scheme, because Crazy Eddie fraud was in 3 phases. From 1969 to 1979, it was just garden variety skimming and insurance fraud. From 1979 to 1984, it was winding down the skimming to zero and inflating our profits in the process, because we were reporting more income as opposed to making more money. Then after 1984, we go public, and then afterwards, we start inflating our income to sell stock at inflated prices. Eventually, it came to a crash in 1987. What happened was that consumer electronics was becoming commoditized. That TV set that you sold for $200, you were selling, and this is an extreme example, but just for purpose of illustration, that $200 TV that you were selling, you're now selling for $100. So you had to sell twice as many TVs to keep up with your revenue. Also, because we stopped skimming, we were no longer competitive, because in the past we would use the money from the skimming, the money that we saved in paying sales taxes, that gave us a big edge over our competitors who were not skimming, because we could use some of that money to give discounts to customers. Well, now we were a public company, we were no longer skimming, we were slowly but surely losing the competitive edge. And we didn't have the profits to show, because we no longer could be competitive as far as price was concerned. So eventually it was going to crash anyway. In 1987, it did. And the stock price went from $80 a share, I think it was $8 a share. And by that time, the Antar family had cashed out. They really milked the cow, I'd say. They went from 100% of the company. They cashed out about $90 million or so dollars, and they only owned 5% of the company. And somebody, thought that Crazy Eddie's was a gold mine, took over the company in a proxy battle, and booted us out, or booted me out too. And eventually they took inventory and they said, oh shit, we got really fucked over here. But, that was the moral of the story. That was your moral story. Do your due diligence. And the Fed started investigating. Initially, I did everything I could to obstruct justice, suborn perjury, most of the documents by the time I left were completely destroyed. And the key documents I kept myself. Early on, 2 witnesses did come forward to the feds, but they only accused certain members of the Antar family, which is me and Eddie and a few others, and protected other members of the Antar family. So the government investigation was focusing on a small subset of the fraudsters. And they immunized these witnesses. And when eventually 2 years later, when I came in and told them the real story, and I told them about the Panama Pump and the skimming and all of this, things that these immunized witnesses left out to protect members of the Antar family, the feds didn't believe me. Well, I had lied under oath, and I didn't. I don't blame them for not believing me. So my lawyer's name was Anthony Mortone. He recently passed away. He later became a federal judge. The only time he met with the feds was the first meeting and the last meeting to sign my plea bargain. He said he threw me to the feds and said they can only hang you once. They got you, but they got nobody else, and your only chance is to tell the truth. So it became like a full-time job. So for 2 years, I helped the feds piece together the evidence to convince them that I was telling the truth about the massive scale of the fraud. And eventually they signed a plea bargain agreement with me in 1991, no, I'm sorry, 1989, which 2 years after the fall of Crazy Eddie, which I had to plead guilty to 2 felonies. Then when Eddie runs away, the feds needed me to plead guilty to a third felony. Okay, go ahead, whatever. I had no assurances from the feds other than they would make the judge aware of the extent of my cooperation. Eventually, there's criminal trials, there's civil trials. People get sentenced. People didn't get tried in criminal cases, were tried in civil cases, like O.J. Simpson. You know, because criminal case, is beyond a reasonable doubt. Civil cases is preponderance of evidence. So eventually, eventually my helpfulness as a witness was given to the judge, and the judge gave me 6 months of house arrest, 1,200 hours of community service, and the lawyers for the defrauded shareholders gave me a complete walk on civil liability. I don't know how to dime to any victims whatsoever. That's pretty much my story as best I can describe it. I left a lot of parts out because it's hard to describe almost 20 years of fraud in less than 20 minutes.
Absolutely. What did you do immediately preceding that? Like how'd you earn money, and like what happened? You're on the house arrest, and then like what do you do from the time that you're convicted and you serve your sentence on the house arrest? What'd you do from that time, and how'd you earn income? Like what'd you do now you're convicted?
Well, I
felon?
was making great income at Crazy Eddie's, so I had a large amount of savings.
Yeah.
But for my freedom, you have $1 million in the bank, say, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to spend 10 years in prison. I don't want to spend 10 years in prison to protect $10 million. I'm a guy with young kids. I'm young married. I don't need this shit, So pretty much my savings went to zero. And, I had other family that lent me money and that assisted me financially during this very, very torturous time.
And then
And at this, go ahead.
No,
So
but-
go ahead. You were asking. Go ahead, Sam.
So Sam, what I'm saying is, after that whole time, what'd you do from that time to now? Like, what'd you do? Like, you depleted your savings. How'd you earn income after that? Like, what was your career after that?
Okay, after that, because I didn't owe anybody a dime, save for a couple of small fines, so to speak, right? I was able to start on my own and start making income, investing money here and there, and also, with money that was lent to me by family. And also, the most important thing was I had an education. And an education is infinite because you can always draw upon it to help you move forward. I had a marketable skill. And the feds recognized that because I was cooperating with the FBI from 1989 to 1993 and with the Securities and Exchange Commission from 1989 to 1997. So the feds recognized that quality, and I had a good relationship with the feds. They weren't, guys that they didn't waterboard me or torture me or anything like that. And I learned a long time ago, never hate your enemies. So it was strictly business for me, and it was strictly business for them. And I come to learn that that's the way it is with a lot of these white collar cases. They end up befriending the same guys that try to put them in prison. So we had this mutual respect, and they recognized I had this ability about crime and numbers. And that sophistication. They started asking me to teach. And then when I started teaching for the feds, people, the grapevine went around and I started teaching in colleges and universities. And I used to do it for free up until about 2008. And I says, something, why am I doing this for free? So I started charging for it, except for, of course, the FBI, because I owed them something. And the IRS, I owe them something. Hold on. But the IRS gave me this mug that they said, bring to an audit in case you ever get audited. Hold on. This will signal, it's got a badge in it. This will signal that they got to leave you alone. I'm only kidding. But I did government, and I liked it. And Yeah, it went on from there. Eventually, I started working for Jordan Thomas at Labaton and Sucharo. He had a whistleblower practice. I brought him cases as the whistleblower, just doing straight financial analysis as an outsider, me and another forensic accountant. And we received substantial whistleblower rewards. Then he hires me also as on a per diem basis. When other whistleblowers came in, he paid me currently out of his future anticipated share of getting a whistleblower reward. I also worked for law firms that were suing corporations in class actions. So I pretty much, that was my career, teaching and using my financial knowledge, or accounting knowledge to ferret out fraud.
I'm blown away by this story about the vast knowledge that you had back then with the way you were correlating business to your expertise as a forensic accountant. So, what I heard you said that you didn't have to pay any money to victims. So, was this a victimless crime, or were there victims?
No,
And if
it
there
was no,
were,
there was no, it was not a victimless crime. People lost hundreds of millions of dollars, but the lawyers representing the class action and the investors that opted out of the class action, in other words, the entire universe of investors, gave me a complete walk on civil liability because I was very cooperative with them. And number one, finding where the bodies were buried. And number two, expediting the money's return to investors. Okay, now, in a fraud, securities fraud, there's no clawbacks like with Bernie Madoff, where you made money, you got to claw it back so that the people who lost money are reimbursed. So let's say the stock the company was worth $500 million and it went to nothing. The investors that made money when the stock went from, say, $50 million valuation to 500 million, they don't have to give back the money. So there's the shareholders did not, even though the government eventually recovers and the class action lawyers more money than the Antars actually made on the stock because they had other things going before the company went public, like skimming and other things, right? The shareholders did not get 100 cents back on the dollar. They got about, I think it was like 40 cents on the dollar. But in those days, that was a spectacular recovery. For many years, it was the largest recovery at the SEC. You're talking about 1986, is almost 40 years ago. So they were very, very happy with the result. And they went in front. They wrote very glowing letters to the judge, as Gary Weiss said in his book, Retail Gangster: The History of Crazy Eddies. It sounded like letters of recommendation in a good way. And the judge just gave me 6 months of house arrest, and I realized I'm lucky. I'm humbled by it. And the fact is that the FBI and the SEC and the DOJ, they took me under their wing and they showed me a different way, so to speak. Now, the only reason why I'm here is because I got caught. If I wasn't here, if I wasn't caught, I would have still continued on and on and on. Kind of like broken windows policing, the absence of it. I got caught, and that put the brakes on me. That doesn't mean it'll work with everybody, but at least put the brakes. It put the brakes on me. So the reason why I cooperated, I want to make this clear. I didn't have that God moment. I didn't have that moment that, oh, I feel guilty about what I did. No. The reason why I cooperated was to save my ass. Period. I wanted to save my ass. I wasn't going to go down for an entire family that made close to $90 million when I was making maybe $400,000 a year back then. Who knows what it equates to today? Okay, I wasn't going to go down for that. Period. So that's why I cooperated, and that's why I made deals. And that's the reality of the criminal justice system. It's not really a justice system, it's a legal system. In order to get the big fish, you have to make deals with unsavory characters like myself. Otherwise, cases will never move forward because they really tip the scales in favor of criminals. Now, yes, some criminals get wrongfully convicted. Some people, innocent people, get wrongfully convicted. I get it, but in the vast majority of cases, okay, the criminals are. Um, in all of the cases, the criminals do have the advantage. You have the advantage because you are constrained as law enforcement by your behavior. You have codes of ethics. You have laws that you have to abide by. Me, as a fraudster, I have no constraints. I can do whatever the hell I want, when I want, and there's nothing you can do about it. I will, as a fraudster, I will always have the initiative to commit my crimes. You can't barge into my apartment right now and say, "Oh, Sam, we suspect you're doing this or that." Yeah, you need judicial process. So I had a this reservoir of knowledge. I had this that I utilized, you know, for for to teach and to move forward, so to speak.
See, I just got to ask you one thing because me
Yeah,
and Eric both born in the '80s, but we both remember the Crazy Eddie commercials,
yeah.
and they were honestly, till today I can remember them, and I was a kid when I heard them. Who was the marketing behind that? Was it you? Do you know who that
No,
was?
no. He didn't get the credit where credit was due until Gary Weiss wrote his book. His name was Larry Weiss, no relationship to Gary. He was the architect of that whole advertising thing, and he brought in Jerry Carroll as the insane, whatever, as the pitchman.
Yeah.
Larry Weiss was the man. Now, Larry, here's a lesson. Larry was never involved in the fraud, not the least bit. In fact, he left the company 2 years before the securities fraud. I don't think we paid him off the books. I doubt it. He was not part of the there were various inner circles, but the inner circle that engaged in certain nefarious activities. But it affected him later on. It's kind of like if you have Enron on your resume or Arthur Anderson in the accounting world, who was Enron's auditors, the first question that comes up: fraud, fraud, and fraud. So he was a victim of the Crazy Eddie fraud, even though he did not participate in it, and he left the company years before.
Let's
So it
talk
goes to
about
show you that crime has many victims, not just the immediate victims. Go ahead.
that's well, let's talk about mindset, right? So as cops, we always talked about corruption amongst the NYPD, and that usually that people that fall into corruption have the ability to not fear adverse consequence. So during this time that you were committing fraud, did you fear that you were going to get caught, or did you always think that you had leverage on the feds? Did you think that you were just impervious to being caught? What was your mindset this time?
Did you go to college
I sure did.
or high school? Okay. You were in the
Yes.
first grade, and then you went to the second grade, into the third grade, right? You progress as time goes on. The same thing with criminals. You build on your past successes and you be cautious so you can obtain future successes. So the answer is I didn't believe I was going to get caught because I took precautions. I measured my risk accordingly. Now, putting that aside, the one thing that concerned me was always a whistleblower. And in fact, the ACFE, the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, which is an organization of fraud examiners, obviously. They do a study every 2 year study, and consistently 50% of white collar crimes are uncovered because of the IRS actually taught me this term, the three X's, and it's not pornography: ex lovers, ex business associates, or people you dealt with in business, and ex employees. And they're not out, they're not doing it because they want a better world. They're just doing it to break even. So that was pretty much my major concern. As far as the auditors are concerned, yes, well, of course I had to do things to fool them, to distract them, etc. But I took precautions and I never got caught. The only reason why I got caught, here's the thing. Most frauds get caught because there's a tip-off, or the feds hear something from somebody, or the auditors, can't make the books balance. In my case, I was caught because of the success of our fraud. Somebody took over Crazy Eddie's, believing that the financials were accurate, even though the numbers were going down, and thought that they were buying this golden goose on the cheap. They didn't realize it was far worse than what we were presenting.
Yeah, I always heard it different. I heard that, like, I don't know. I heard you guys were taking auditors out and getting them drunk, and then like you would request young auditors. I heard something different.
Oh yeah, no, that's true. That's true, by the way, because in fraud, the distraction is more important than the lie. I'll give you an idea. If you have an 8-week audit, right? Okay, you expect the auditors to complete 12.5% each week. So by week 6 of 8, they should have 75% of their work done and 25% of their work to do. My job was by week 6 of 8 was to reverse those percentages. 25% of the work done and 75% of the work left to do in the last 2 weeks, which would make them do 300% more work in the last 3 weeks, which meant that they would work quickly, they would miss out on key audit procedures in the rush to please the client to get the audit out on time. That's how I pretty much took advantage of it, because the distraction means you don't have to lie.
So what's interesting to me is that, right, so you became sort of like a confidant for the Securities Exchange and the feds with this type of fraud. Was this type of fraud that you were involved in, that you spearheaded, was this the first of its kind? Or was this something that was done before and you guys just enhanced it?
Yeah, it was done before in the hands, except for the Panama pump. That was exclusively ours. It was even in the movie The Accountant, Ben Affleck, and the lady's ready to, she thinks she's going to, get the first base with him, and he goes, Crazy Eddie in the Panama pump. Crazy Eddie in the Panama. And he gave my boss credit, but that's okay. He was paying me.
Did you create the Panama pump? Was
Yes,
that you
yes. I created the Panama pump. I
patented?
created the gradual reduction in skimming. I was like the Tom Hayden of the family, but I was the accountant. Tom Hayden, Godfather. I was
Yep.
the wartime consigliere. I was the wartime accountant, consigliere, whatever.
So when did you start whitecollarfraud.com? You talk about a lot of things on social media. We interact on social media a lot. Like, you talk about a lot of things in New York City. I know the city bikes and the bike lanes bother you a lot, but what got you into whitecollarfraud.com?
In 2003, somebody cold called me from a company called Network Solutions and convinced me to set up a website, which I did. So ugly. You could probably pick it up on the Wayback Machine. Ugh. Eventually, around 2007, 2008, I was a journalist did a story on me in his personal blog. His name was Jeff Matthews, and he was very friendly with this guy from Market Watch, Herb Greenberg. And Herb Greenberg saw the thing in his blog and did this whole story about me. And then I started following Herb Greenberg and various related financial journalists and realized that they were fighting this war with this company called Overstock.com that was run by this Patrick Byrne. He's an election denier. He's he's a real whack job. Anyway, so I started looking at the financials and I found financial irregularities. And rather than correct them, he fought back at me. That's why I'm used to these social media wars. I mean, he had private investigators, dug up this. And one time they even called up my ex-wife trying to dig up dirt on my divorce. She said, "Who the fuck are you?" She said, in other words, just because we're divorced doesn't mean we hate each other. So it was kind of like that, and eventually the SEC did take action. Unfortunately, back in the at that time around 2007 to 2012, the SEC was giving slaps on the wrist. Nothing happened, whatever. So, but I did help the SEC do 2 investigations of them where they did have to change their numbers and slap on the wrist. Okay, got it. Around 2010, I started looking, right towards the end of Overstock, I started looking at a company called Green Mountain Coffee Roasters. And I actually that was my first whistleblower case where I submitted to the SEC and everything. And The SEC decided not to do an investigation, decided to terminate and take no action against Green Mountain Coffees. Oh, shit. Okay. For nothing. But the civil plaintiffs in the civil lawsuits, the ones that were suing them for securities fraud, who eventually hired me to be their expert accountant, they got a $50 million recovery from Green Mountain Coffee. So the SEC drops the case. The civil plaintiffs get a $50 million recovery. Now, if the SEC had gotten that $50 million, I would have had a $15 million whistleblower reward. Plus, they take out the taxes, about $8 million, whatever. But yeah, the point is that I kept on doing what I was doing, and what I did as I was doing it, I was gaining attention, and eventually I was hired by Labaton and Citraro after I started using them to submit whistleblower claims.
This is like, it reminds me of the movie Catch Me If You Can. I'm sure you've seen it, right?
Yes, it is. It does, and he's a good man. He actually wrote a very good review on Gary Weiss's book, which was really nice. Gary Weiss did this 270 some odd page book about Crazy A's with 27 pages of footnotes because he wanted to be careful. He had access to all of the documents, including the shredded documents. In other words, he had access to everything, so he wrote a very, very accurate account of it. He made 3 small mistakes, which you won't ever catch because there were spelling errors, and one thing he got a date wrong, which was fixed in the paperback version. Thank God. And Gary had interviewed me 15 years before the book when I still had everything fresh in my mind.
Let me ask. I just want curious. I want to ask you this, right? We talked about mindset before. So, how did you feel? So, for all these years, you're committing this fraud, and at this point, obviously, you didn't think you were going to get caught yourself. You don't want to get caught. But how do you feel at this point that now you become a confidant and you're giving guidance and expertise so that other people get caught? How did that make you feel?
Oh, how does it make me feel? Let's put it this way. Never mess with the timeline. I'm sure you've watched Star Trek or science fiction or was it Dr. X or whatever it was. Who's that? The Marvel guy. Anyway, never mess with the timeline. Okay, because what you're seeing around us today it has history that got us there. In other words, acceptance. Now, I have 3 sons, 2 passed away, right? Acceptance, right? What am I going to do about it? But some very, very good things have happened to me on a personal basis, which I won't put on the air, but on a personal basis, not monetary or anything like that. So you have to just accept things as they are.
So, obviously it's a police podcast, right? We push back at the upper echelon a lot.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons we really started connecting on social media was the crime statistics, right? They give arbitrary time frames, and I'll always give, I'll look at the big picture as far as when they push crime statistics. You wrote a blog recently, and you didn't get credit from the New York Post, but you should have gotten credit from the New York Post.
Okay.
And it's fine because at the end of the day, I know that's not your goal, and I know you're not looking for fame or money or clout. But I mean, it should be out there that it was you, it was you, and you came that for 2023, the NYPD reported to all of New York City that crime was down.
They did 0.03%, like it was a big thing, whatever. Not forgetting that 2019. It was still 29% higher in 2019, the last normal year before COVID, bail reform, discovery reform, etc. So in other words, crime shoots up, but then it just goes slowly down, and all of a sudden, look at that.
So they do this
here's the problem. Let me interrupt you. Sure. The mayor, the police department, okay, the leadership, not the leadership, the appointed members, okay, the members of the city council, they're all amateur versions of me when I was doing crime. They're amateur lawyers, they're amateur fraudsters, and it's very easy to catch them. And for me, it's just like a game, it's like a puzzle. I enjoy it. Nobody's paying me for this. I mean, I'm 67 years old. You see me post pictures of geese, petting the geese where nobody can go near them, but the geese love me. They're probably afraid of my criminal record. Anyway, whatever the case is, that you see me take pictures of something, I can do a lot of things, whatever. But I like numbers, and I like to play with numbers and see what the reality is. And the more I dig into these numbers, I realize how shitty they are.
So,
I'm talking about the quality of the numbers.
yeah.
Aside from crime, yeah.
So New York City goes on this whole campaign: crimes down, crimes down, crimes down, crimes down, celebrating a 0.32% decrease. You go back on those 2023 numbers, right? And could you just talk to the audience a little bit about that, like what you found?
There's the weekly ComStat report, right? And at the end of the year, it shows the year-to-date numbers, which I think on January 4th, our glorious mayor used. It says crime is down 0.3%. It's nothing, like 800 felony crimes, whatever, right? Then the next week, when you looked at the bottom, when they showed the historical numbers for 2023 of the same weekly report, and you say, wait a second, 2023, it looks like crime was up in 2023 over 2022. And then finally, they put out this historical report showing crime statistics over the last 20 years, which validated the week later's report numbers. But there was no correction. It was just like, swept under the rug. So when you're going to say crime is down, people whatever. He is irresponsible by giving New Yorkers a false sense of security. Now, we all know, because we're New Yorkers, we're not stupid, we're not dumb people. We see what's around us. There's a lot of things that don't rise to the level of crime. Like if a crazy nut, which I've had on the subway, starts accosting you. There's a lot of crap that doesn't rise to crime. Also, crime is not reported. Now, when they talk about crime, you have to look at the categories of crime. Okay, there's the 7 major felonies. 7 majors: murder, rape, robbery, felonious assault, grand larceny, auto, and there's another one I forgot.
You're missing one.
What?
Burglary.
Burglary, right. Okay. You have those 7. Then you have the non-major 7 felonies, of which one category includes rape other, which is sexual assault that's not rape, like what a pedophile does.
Yeah.
Whatever. I actually posted it today. And then you have what's known as misdemeanor assault. See, there are 3 levels of assault in New York. There's felony assault 1, felony assault 2, felony assault 3. Felony assault 3 is where to just get a plea bargain and move forward, or not to have that felony show up, they charge with felony assault 3. I'm sure you guys know the game. So I decided to do that. So when they're talking about crime, okay, what measure of crime are they using? Is it property crime, violent crime, index crime, non-index crime? And I noticed that they just cherry pick figures. Take shooting, for instance. A shooting in New York only counts if the bullet strikes the victim. If I shoot a gun at you and I miss, it doesn't count as a shooting. That's crazy. And part of the problem is that on a weekly basis, ComStat reports the crime numbers and the number of shootings, but I don't report the number of gun-involved crimes. I gotta wait now. The latest year we have is 2022. I gotta wait till it's published on the New York State website, which nobody knows exists because everybody's looking at the NYPD website. I gotta wait until July and August. By that time, the lies that they made were still about gun crimes. In 2022, for instance, gun shootings went down in New York City, but the amount of gun-involved crimes went up. What does it tell you? Just because somebody misses the target, that means we're more safe? For God's sake, they like to cherry pick these numbers. Also, there's another thing. There's the FBI UCR numbers, which is a broader category of crime. Usually the murder numbers match and the robbery numbers match. The rape numbers don't match, but New York City discloses it, says we don't use the UCR numbers, but the felony assault numbers don't match. And you will see generally that the felony assaults that the feds, they call it aggravated assault, report is way higher than the felony assaults that we report. Now, is that because some of those felony assaults that the feds consider aggravated assault, those misdemeanor assaults under New York law? So in other words, these crime statistics are unreliable and they don't provide enough timely data. So how do you expect precinct commanders, criminologists, politicians even, of all persuasions to make informed decisions, even if they wanted to, which most of the time they don't. But that's the problem that we have with the NYPD data today.
I love it. We know you mentioned reality. We talk about perception.
The
What's that?
NYPD data makes crazy Eddie's phony financials look legitimate.
That's quite interesting that you say that, because you said reality, right? Yeah, that's outstanding. You said reality. Listen. All we hear from the police department now, and it's nauseating how many times we hear it, is this: they're trying to sell this idea of perception versus reality. So what I'm interested about, I think this is the obvious.
I live in this city, okay? I live in Manhattan. Right. I live south of Midtown, and I'm telling you, what I see is what I see. Okay.
No,
let's say, wait a minute. Let's say
I know. I'm telling you what they're trying to sell. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, let's say I walk by and I slap you in the face, okay? Which would be a third-degree felony. You don't give a flying fuck if it's first degree, second degree, third degree. You don't give a shit. You know that you were slapped in the face. This is what these politicians don't understand. And what gets me is, as a former criminal that defrauded so many people, had so many victims, the lack of empathy by these people who supposedly never committed crimes before, making excuses and rationalizing crime. I'm just perplexed. I don't get it. I just don't get it with these people. And
well, I just want to ask you this.
We're talking more about the city council and the mayor
I
and
understand.
some of these politicians. These
Sam, tell me this.
Politicians. Yeah.
I think this is the obvious, but and we were just talking about this when you went out. What sparked your interest to look into the numbers of the NYPD? What really piqued your interest?
I love numbers, and this wasn't easy. And I was friends with who was at the NYPD? Paul Morrow, who was the former chief deputy, former number 2 guy, and I think it was in counterterrorism. I known him for years, and we used to talk and share stories and things like that. So I got into the crime numbers. Really got deeply into it, not just shouting at them, but doing deep analysis of it in the last several months. Also, unfortunately, I had 3 sons. 2 passed away. The second one passed away 2 years ago, and they didn't have the mental facility to do it. I didn't have the mental capacity. So as soon as I started, recovering from that, which is not an easy thing to do, you never really fully recover. Okay, and I started getting interested in the crime stats just to test the brain to see if I could still, do what I used to do. And this is a big easy. As I said, these people are amateur crooks. They're amateur versions of what I did.
Yeah. So Sam puts out his analysis, and it's just based off of the numbers that they post late and don't ever tell anyone when they continue to go on the news.
Right.
And tell
financial irregularities. In other words, I'm using their own numbers against them.
Yeah, it's their numbers.
In the absence of me having the access to the information that they have.
Yeah.
But all of these guys, all of these politicians talk about gun crimes. How come not one politician has called for reporting gun-related crimes involving guns on a weekly basis? You don't think the NYPD has that stat?
Absolutely, yeah.
Why don't they report that? Because it goes against the narrative. It goes against that. When you go into the CompStat, every once in a while it pops up. We see 40,000 guns. I don't give a flying fuck if he's got 70,000 guns. I want to know how many people are using those guns. And that seems to be going up. Okay, because gun-involved crimes, as I said, in the latest figures I have available is 2022, they went up while shootings went down.
Yeah, so just so you understand, crime for 2023 currently is up 2.4%. But that's only because the NYPD does random small sampling audits that are required by the FBI. So they're only sifting through minor amounts of complaint reports that were misclassified and then upgrading them later on. So
Well,
it's not like there was a full audit done. If there was a full audit done on the crime numbers, crime would be up, God only knows how much, because you would see then exactly how much misclassification is actually going on.
You have pensions, all of you guys, right? You're retired police, right?
Yep.
And how's your pension money invested? In public companies, right? And
Brad
public
Land
company,
Brad Land is doing a wonderful job.
right? And public companies are audited by accounting firms who do the same sampling techniques as the FBI. How does that make you feel safe with your money?
No, not at all. Especially now that we're going into this green energy and all this other stuff, whatever Brad Lander decides we're going into.
People don't pick auditors. I know we're swaying away from violent crime to white collar. People don't pick auditors because they want them to catch their mistakes. They pick auditors are what we call useful enablers. We pick auditors based upon the easiness of obtaining a clean accounting opinion, whether you're committing a crime or not. And the PCAOB, which is the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, can't believe I remember that, I'm 67. Anyway, 25% of audits are not done according to guidelines. And that's what they catch based upon their small sample too. You know what I'm saying to you? So I'm giving you an idea about how dangerous things really are out there that people don't realize.
Well, you know what, Sam?
We're not living in a safe society in any stretch of the imagination.
Since you brought it up, I think that's great, because we talk about pensions all the time, and that pensions potentially could be in jeopardy, especially with Brad Lander. So tell us right now, what should we be wary of with our pensions? So, because we try to explain to the cops and they don't get it, they think it's just guaranteed. So, what is your perspective right now on the pensions? What should we be wary of, and what should we be fearful of, and what could we be confident of when it comes to the pensions?
I'm never I learned from the FBI when I finally came in. They didn't trust and then verify. They didn't trust and verified. In other words, don't trust, just verify. That's the way I would approach investments. And the only thing you can do, which is not much, really, is to make sure that they do as diversified portfolio as possible, so that one crazy Eddie or Enron that they invest in doesn't have a material effect on your future pension earnings.
Gotcha.
I've looked at the pension numbers, and it's kind of like, I only have so many hours in the day. I just rather do the crime numbers. It's just easier, because I know myself. Once I start getting into the pension numbers, I'm like this, like in the movie The Accountant. I won't stop. I'll just keep on going in.
Stan, what do you think was the best time to live in New York City as far as low crime? And how do you feel living in New York City now, currently?
See, people look at the mayors, and it's not always entirely the mayors. There were two great police chiefs and a few in between that actually just rode on their coattails and their momentum. One was Bill Bratton, and the other one was Ray Kelly. And the smartest thing de Blasio, to his credit, did was to hire Ray Kelly. And he let Ray Kelly pretty much do whatever he wanted, because he realized a city of disorder, you can't have your socialist utopia in a city of disorder, because he was a socialist. But what happened was, as Ray Kelly left, okay, de Blasio went to that old dogma bullshit, that, the cops, everything, the cops are evil, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So for a while, he was riding on the momentum of all the previous successes. Where it started to come to a hit, to a crash, was the George Floyd riots in 2020. Now, that's when we actually started getting me interested in New York City crime, because during the George Floyd riots, somebody burned a fire in a dumpster right outside my apartment building. I was furious. So I get on Twitter and I want to see what these New York politicians are saying. And you got the politicians rather saying that these are bad, whatever. We need calm. They're egging these assholes on. Now, I get that there are some legitimate griefs, but legitimate griefs, okay, doesn't mean burning dumpsters, burning cars, assaulting police, assaulting normal, regular citizens. Doesn't mean destroying property. Doesn't mean throwing rocks through glass. You know, whatever. That's unheard of. And the politicians were treating like nothing. So that's what got me involved. But again, I didn't have the uh, that's what basically started getting me involved. Go ahead.
No, it's interesting. You say you got involved. You were saying you didn't have the mental capacity because of the loss of two of your sons, which
My son passed away. My son passed away about a year later. Okay, but I didn't have. But still, it was like only 6 years after the death of the previous son. So you didn't have it all there, so to speak.
listen, my heart goes out to you for that. But so you talk about looking to numbers, right? And it's interesting with the crime. Did you ever look into the crime numbers before under the Ray Kelly era or under Bratton?
No,
So
I
this was the
assumed
only
that
time.
everything was good because I could see outside my own apartment in Manhattan that things were good, that things were
So
okay. I mean,
perception,
I'm an
so
avid
perception and
walker.
reality meet.
Right, right. I'm an avid walker. Okay. I used to walk 2, 3 in the morning and not worry about it. I can't walk around the corner anymore and not worry about it. I eat out a lot because, unfortunately, I learned how to cook the books instead of cooking food. So I eat out a lot. And as a white collar criminal, I was very, very, talkative. I very, very friendly to people because you can steal more with a smile than you can with a gun. But that's another story. And I talked to waitresses and waiters and restaurant managers, and these people are afraid to go home at night and take the subways. Restaurants are closing early, and it's getting harder for them to find somebody that's going to work the full shift till 10:30, 11 o'clock, and then go home and make that hour trek to Queens or to Brooklyn or to the Bronx. It's not, it's kind of like, why is shoplifting down if it is down? Well, we have all of these glass plexiglass windows, right? Guarding all of these goods. If crime is down, or why isn't it growing even higher or much higher? Well, part of it is the underreporting of crime, but also it's because people are afraid to go out. The daytime population of Manhattan used to be something like 4 million people, 1.6 million residents, minus the residents that leave the borough, plus the residents that come, plus the non-residents that came into the borough in the form of tourists, commuters, etc. It's not 4 million anymore. The last estimates I saw was like 2.5 million. Now, if you want to talk about real crime per capita, even a flat crime rate means crime is going up in Manhattan. Yes, we did have a modest increase in residents, but most people are telecommuting. They're not commuting into Manhattan as much as they used to.
Yeah, a lot of empty office buildings.
A lot of empty, right? Exactly. So if there's less, if the daily population, I'm not talking about the living population, the daily population has declined, say 20%, but crime is the same. What does that tell you? Per capita crime has gone up 20%. Now nobody talks about that. Now, as a forensic accountant that became very successful at, I talked about it. That was my job.
Yeah, no, I listen, and my knock on the upper echelon is that they're enablers. They're enablers to these politicians to lie. Like they're
Right.
basically, and I don't blame the NYPD for crime being up. Like when they talk about arrests are up or gun arrests are up, I'm like, I get it. You guys are doing your job, but there's
I get it
there's
too.
players involved. I get
Let's put
that.
it this
But
way, for every cop that we've subtracted since 2019, there were 4 victims of color.
one cop.
No, 1 cop, 4 victims of color. Each cop they got rid of.
And what'd you say? I think the number you said was that the overall department decreased by 7% since that.
7%. That is correct. I'm using their numbers,
Yeah.
so they can't refute me on it. Their numbers I'm using.
And I think that number is a lie. I think it's more than that, by the way. But
Yeah, but not only
Right,
that, when
because-
people talk about cops, let's take the cop. There's a police department uniformed, and then you have the cops on the street. I don't recall the exact number. Let's say you have 20,000 police officers. How many of them are on duty at one time? First, you have 3 shifts. Am I correct? You have days off. You have vacations. you have sick, whatever. At any given time, okay, maybe a fifth of that are on duty in the entire city of New York. Maybe about 2,000 of them. And a lot of those cops are on duty. If a cop's got to get distracted doing paperwork with this new law, or if a cop is making a collar, or a cop is responding to a complaint, you have a much less pool to be able to respond to people.
Tell us about the breakdown. Tell us about the breakdown that you did with the percentage of when it comes to diversity. Talk about this DEI movement, and I saw that you did a breakdown of what percentage is black and brown. Now, the general makeup of the NYPD. What numbers did you
General
use?
makeup
Which
of
I'm
the
assuming.
NYPD is approximately 52% Black and Latino. Their share of the population is 49%. But let's look. The leadership of the NYPD, the appointed leadership, is all, you have Caban. I think he's Dominican, Latino, right? Yeah, might not be Dominican, but he's Latino. You have Eric Adams, Black mayor. You want to go to the corrections department, okay? It's the same thing. It's like 85%, 90% Black and Latino guards and supervisors, and the head of the corrections department is Black and Latino, right? So if people are saying there's systemic racism. You're saying that the Black and Latinos are in on it too? For God's sake, yes, there are instances of systemic racism. We all know that. Nobody's denying that. There's always going to be instances because some people are going to do evil things. We can't help that. There's no such thing as zero crime. There's no such thing as zero prejudice. Okay, but is it systemic? No, by a long shot. Because if you look at the data of people that were stopped, questioned, and frisked, and you compare it with another independent set of data called people that are arrested for crimes, it pretty much follows very, very closely based upon demographic lines.
Yeah, I mean,
And unfortunately, most of these politicians, especially the ones that come from these minority communities, do they really care about their minority? I say no, because most crimes are, I hate to say it to you, most crimes are committed by people of the same national race and ethnicity upon people of the same race and ethnicity. It's a fact.
yeah.
So when
No,
they're
yeah.
talking about, defunding the police, what's going to result in more minority victims because they are the ones who suffer most of the crime. 95 of the percent of the shootings where a bullet hits somebody is black or Latino, right? 75% of all major felonies victims are black and Latino. So you want to cut the police department, you're not helping members of your own community. And Adams won because the Black and Latino community recognized it, except that Adams ended up to be an empty suit.
Yeah, he lied.
He
So
lied.
what? So like the argument amongst progressives is that it's cosmetic diversity. They put these black and brown people in charge of the New York City Police Department, but the system overall is racist. So, and why they say the system overall is racist is they say that 97% of everyone who is stopped utilizing stop, question, and frisk are black and Latino. What do you have to
That's
say?
not true. That number is not true, by the way. I don't think it's 97%. Hold on a second. That number is not true. A lot of
That's
people
what
like to
City
quote phony
Council,
numbers.
Tiffany Caban, all of them have
Yep.
spewed that number. So
Yeah,
what
just
do you have
hold
to
on.
say to them?
No, I want to pull it up. I want to pull this one up.
Yeah, pull it up, but respond to that too. Like, what do you want to say?
I'll
That
respond after I pull it up. Hold on.
Yeah.
He schooled you.
Okay. Here, blacks. 60% of the people pulled over for stop, question, and frisk are blacks. They represent 53% of the arrests. 31% of the people pulled over are Hispanic, Latinos. They represent 34%, 35% of the of the arrests. Okay, blacks and Latinos combined, because there's a lot of confusion sometimes. People, they make mistakes, misclassify. Okay, 91.7% of the people pulled over for stop, question, and frisk is black and Latino, not 97%. But 88% of the people arrested for crime are black and Latino. It's a small insignificant statistical variance of 3%. That's
So,
not systemic
that's
racism.
systemic
That's
racism.
not systemic racism. I'm sorry, the numbers don't show it. Yes, you can
And
point to
those
100. I
numbers,
get it on Twitter. Well, this guy did this. This guy did that. Yeah, I get that. But we're talking about systemic. We're not
no,
talking about individual incidences.
those numbers are from what are your sources for those numbers?
The NYPD's own numbers. NYPD's.
No, it's outstanding because you solidify the argument that
And the
John and I make.
politicians were quoting these numbers or misquote.
Yes.
Were saying, well, 90%. They were using these numbers, but they weren't showing the other side of the numbers. That's called
Well,
cherry picking.
it solidifies what John and I have been saying on this podcast is that the NYPD chases crime and the crime correlates to the black and brown
Right.
community. It's
You can't.
unfortunate, but it's the reality.
You cannot make arrests based upon the percentage that any demographic group represents in the general population. You got to follow the criminals. You can't do a predefined result. Otherwise, you're not going to have an effective NYPD.
Absolutely. But that's what we're saying.
Not going to happen.
When I was a special operations lieutenant, John was doing anti-crime. We studied the crime and analysis. Especially, I was working in Police Service Area 7, the South Bronx. It's a high volatile, high crime area. Propensity for crime. Unfortunately, it's 99% black and brown. Those were the people that we were stopping. Those were the stop and frisk. Was there a margin of error? Of course there is.
You're saving the same people within that community that are black and brown.
Absolutely.
That's what they don't
And I
realize.
appreciate.
I'm sure you spoke. The problem is the media focuses on the radicals and makes believe that they're the voices for the best black and brown or black and Latino community. They're not, because most people in those communities, okay, that's why Mayor Adams won, okay, because he spoke the language that you and I are talking about, but again, he ended up to be an empty suit. Most people want more police protection, not less, in those communities. It's the radicals that get elected because most people are apathetic and don't vote where they should vote. It's the radicals that get elected with very small, minuscule percentages of the vote that dominate the city council today.
What do you think about Adams?
As I said, he's an empty suit. I liked him at first. I thought, okay, give him a chance, but he ended up to be an empty suit.
Compare him to
He's another amateur version of the criminal that I was. Yeah. Or I should say fraudster that I was.
if
He's
you
just a
have
fake. He's just a fake and a fraud, just like a few other people in the NYPD and 42 or 51 members of the city council. There's only a few real people in the city council here.
if you had to compare him and Bill de Blasio, who do you think was a better New York City mayor?
De Blasio had the benefit of momentum behind him. Adams did not. Okay, so I have to say Adams was a better mayor than de Blasio. Okay, but they both. But it's kind of like, you give me death by hanging or death by firing squad. What does it matter?
I think Bill de Blasio was a better mayor. That's all.
It's all right, whatever. I mean, I'd like to get to the years of Bloomberg, who I dislike some of his policies. Nobody's perfect. I didn't like his nanny food thing where you get no sugar, whatever the case is. I get that, but he ran the city like an executive. Nobody's running the city like an executive. I remember the early days with Giuliani. Where Bratton would come with his bullhorn on the corners of the Bronx and yell out, and whatever. They closed down all of the drug dens and the numbers runners and the people selling drugs, whatever. And they had the padlock. They're too timid today to do that. They're afraid.
Sam, I got a question for you. You're a pretty outspoken guy. You're a straight shooter. You own the fact that most of your life was spent as a criminal, and you got some humor behind it, which is great. So you had put on Twitter, I don't have the exact verbiage, but you put a riddle about Batman and Joker in reference to the police department. What is the riddle? What is the answer to that riddle?
The riddle was when they were attacking that journalist. What's his name?
Harry Siegel.
Harry Siegel, who happens to follow me. I don't know him personally. And I don't even know his politics. I really don't even care his politics. They attacked him unfairly. Because he made a mistake in a number in his article that didn't change the story of the article. He said 10 is where he should have said 4, but it didn't change what the article was trying to convey. And they picked on it and they went after him. And I gave them that riddle because in the NYPD statistics on stop and frisk, there seems to be a 2.8% gap. The numbers that they show for each demographic group of known stop and frisks only add up to 97 or so percent.
Can you tell the
Now,
public
it's
the riddle
probably, it's
and what the
probably,
answer
it's
is?
probably, it's not, let's put it this way. If they put the right number in, it's not going to make, it's not a material difference. But neither did Harry's mistake was material neither. I just wanted to show them that anybody can make a mistake. I get it. I mean, I'm not calling for an investigation because the NYPD's stock and frisk numbers don't add up. I mean, these, as I said, they're amateur versions of me when I was a cook. Because when I did numbers, phony numbers, at least they added up and they crossfitted. I mean, I can't understand why their numbers don't add up and crossfit. Really, you know.
Yeah, it's
John, you got anything?
yeah. What would you have to say about the NYPD numbers? And I hate to say the NYPD numbers because I mean it's the appointed management under Mayor Adams. So what if you had to like just sum up the NYPD numbers in a few words? Like what would you say about it?
Structurally, the NYPD numbers are based upon the New York Penal Code. And the New York Penal Code pretty much mirrors the FBI's UCR, Uniform Crime Reporting definitions, for murders and robberies. The two numbers are close. When it comes to rapes, New York City's because they follow New York City's penal code, they understate it in the main crime statistics. When it comes to felony assaults, they understate it because the FBI has a more broader version of felony assaults. Okay, the reason for the uniform crime statistic was so you can compare one city's crime to another city's crime. Okay, well, that was why it was important. The New York City numbers, well, it has some limited usefulness as far as trends are concerned, but not much. All right, okay, severely undercounts the amount of severely undercounts based upon if you were to use the FBI UCR definitions. I think New York City should use the FBI UCR definitions. Number two is what's seriously lacking is we don't have reports, weekly reports on how many of those assaults involved a gun. Now, people, Adams won't mention felony assaults in his press release because they're up, right? Neither will that other bozo, Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA, right? They say rape is down, but the majority of violent crimes is in felony assaults. Okay, now you can almost say that a felony assault is the guy that didn't accomplish what he set out to do by murdering somebody. That's the guy that's beaten to the pulp, right? Ends up in a hospital and they revive him in the emergency room. So it's not a murder. Now it's a felony assault. That's the guy that gets his teeth knocked out. That's the guy that gets the broken leg or stabbed. Or the person that's pushed onto the subway tracks but doesn't die. But because to them, what bothers me the most, they have no empathy for victims. I don't care if the stats are down or up. That's not the way you're supposed to talk about crime. You're supposed to talk about crime with empathy for and you have to hear it from me, a guy that was a criminal for 20 years, to have empathy. I have to teach them about empathy. It just drives me nuts.
It's quite interesting, right? So you're into numbers, right? So what's interesting, the chief of transit has spoken out that during COVID, there was much less ridership than there is now. And that's
Yes.
why crime was up. But yet, there's more ridership now, and crime is substantially up, and you've uncovered that. So I would say that doesn't make any sense. What do you think
Well, a
about
lot
that
of things
message
don't
that they're
make
giving to
sense.
people?
First of all, they're using the wrong yardsticks. Okay, he went on the air a few months ago and he says, "Well, subways are safe. Subway crime is only 2% of overall crime." Right? I said, "Wait a second. That doesn't sound right." My mind starts working. The analytical mind. Thank God I was a crook. Otherwise, I wouldn't have this analytical mind. Right? I'm only kidding. Anyway, how much time do people spend on the subway versus how many time they spend outside the subway?
Not just what they need an hour, maybe, average. I don't know.
And how many people also come into New York City with their cars and don't use the subway? And then you have people that live in New York City that migrate out, but there's still a net migration into New York City. So the total real population, the daily population, whether it's Monday or Saturday, how much time do they collectively spend outside the subway than inside the subway?
Oh, I mean, it's
Buckets. Maybe like 1.5. I tried as best I could. And again, there's not that many good numbers available, but using whatever I could find available was like 1.4%. And you know that certain crimes like grand larceny auto can't be committed in the subway. So you have to make allowances for that. So the point being is that by my calculations, by my yardstick, given that it's hard to get completely accurate information for this, and something, the largest city in the world, the most sophisticated, can hire somebody to put this together this way. Okay, based upon the amount of time people spend in the subway, they're approximately 50% more likely to be a victim of a violent major felony than they are off the subways.
yeah.
So that's what infuriated me when cops like
Wow.
him, the chief of
Sam,
transit, right?
Sam, you got to say that again for the public. That's amazing what you just said. You got to say that one more time.
You're 50% more likely to be a victim of a violent major felony crime, as defined under New York's laws, whatever, blah 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 blah. Okay, inside the subway than you are outside the subway, because subway crime is not measured based upon the amount of time you spend in the subway. It's kind of like this. How do they measure auto deaths? By miles traveled. Now, we can't measure that by miles traveled because you have people riding. It's different than auto death. But you can measure it based upon how much time people collectively spend inside the subway. I've seen statistics that say that the average person spends 37 minutes up to 51 minutes. In my analysis, I used the 51-minute number to be conservative. I could, if I used the 37-minute number, it would have been much higher probability. Because there's always somebody that's saying, "Well, you missed this." The point being is that this is not an exact science. You try to do things so that even if you missed out on a small point, it doesn't change the essence of what you're trying to express, the essence of the story. So that is, and to see the chief of the transit authority, sell us a crock of shit bothered me, disturbed me. I said, who the fuck is this guy? Who do you think he's gonna mess with me? I cooked books when this guy was in fucking diapers. I know how to do numbers. Or maybe he wasn't in diapers. Maybe he was I don't know. Maybe he was getting beat up in the schoolyard in high school.
So Sam, another thing that you spoke on that was very interesting. Texas was trying to recruit NYPD cops. Mark Levine, Manhattan Borough President, comes out and compares the violent crime rate of the murder rate and the violent crime rate of Manhattan.
No, he didn't. He compared the murder rate. He didn't do the violent crime rate.
Oh, he didn't. You did the violent crime rate, but
He cherry picked it. Okay, what Mark Levine did, and he loves to do, he takes these red states, the entire red states, right, and he only uses murder, which is bad. Don't get me wrong, whatever. And he compares it to Manhattan, this little tiny little item, which by the way, he has no responsibility whatsoever in any job that he does. He's just a schmuck. He's just a schmuck anyway. But that's besides the point, okay? And so I went and I said, okay, let me go to the FBI UCR numbers. The same numbers he was quoting for murders for 2022, which is the last year that they had UCR numbers that they can pass upon, not preliminary numbers that were accurate as it relates to what they thought was accurate, right? And I did. I added the other categories. And I found out that Manhattan was more dangerous than the 16 red states that he said was more dangerous than Manhattan. I said, if a person gets beat up, that doesn't count. If a woman gets raped or gang raped, that doesn't count. If a person gets robbed at gunpoint, that doesn't count. This is what kind of clowns these guys are. And who the hell gives a flying fuck what a red state Republican says about New York? I don't give a shit. Why do I give a shit is what's happening here. There's the person that gets raped, the person that gets hit over the head, the person whose dad was murdered. Does he give a flying fuck about what's happening in Texas? They care about what's happening here. So this guy, Mark Levine, is just a clown, is an unempathetic clown trying to score political points he is an absolute piece of shit, and I've said it on the air.
You know, I love what you're saying, and I honestly I think that you have a brilliant mind, and it's fascinating how passionate you are about numbers, which I think makes you even more knowledgeable. And the fact that you got into this and really uncover this. And what's amazing about this is you're using
Listen,
their numbers.
I publish my numbers. I show the sources. If you think I'm wrong,
Right.
tell me when I'm wrong.
But what's
And I got a lot of people that don't like me on Twitter. I get that. That's fine. You know something. I learned
that's
more
all.
from the
There's a lot of people
that
who don't like this
criticize
either.
me. Right. I learned more from the people that criticize me than I learned from the people that agree with me, because they make me think sharper. So I get that. But nobody's come up and said any of my numbers have been wrong.
No, it sounds. Listen. It sounds like you're completely on the ball, and you're
No,
using
I
their
put it
actual
out there.
sources.
I don't give non. I went out there with Mark Levine and I computed the numbers and I showed the spreadsheet on my tweet.
Listen, it's completely fascinating that you're using their own numbers. So,
Yeah.
if you didn't uncover this, how would the NYPD hide these numbers? Is there? Do you believe that their goal is it would just not get noticed? How do they hide something like this?
Because they rely upon the fact that most people don't know where to look, and most people don't know where to look. And most people just read but don't understand what they're reading. When I was learning accounting and training to be a more effective criminal, okay, I learned not to look at what I'm reading, but to look beyond what I am reading. The average Joe doesn't have enough time to do that. Okay, so geeks like me, number geeks like me, who like to have fun, okay, that don't need anybody's money, that doesn't give a flying fuck whose feet he steps on, from the right or the left or the center, I'll do it. No problem. I have fun doing it.
That's outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, listen, dude, it's people got to do it, and honestly, I think that I agree. Listen, people are gonna hate on Twitter. It is what it is, but there's a reason I keep retweeting your stuff and asking, can I get a check in aisle 5 here? Because the NYPD is pushing back on misinformation, which they've spread, saying
Yes, they are.
crime is down to 2023, and they have yet to say anything. They're going after Harry Siegel. They're going after pro-police podcasts like this one, Mike up in New Haven. They're going after anyone that criticizes the NYPD. I found it very funny.
They haven't gone after me, so
They have not gone after you.
They
So
will
that's what
eventually.
tells me.
They'll figure some minor thing that I, mistake. I'm 67, so my memory is a little bit foggy from things that happened years ago. And I was like, "Whoa, he didn't say this." Like I'm supposed to have the exact recall that I had 30 years ago. They'll find something. See that, NYPD? You're listening to this broadcast. You know how to find my weakness now. Okay, I'm a 67-year-old old fart, grumpy old crook. Go ahead.
Sam, I'm going to ask you an interesting question, right? Since you're a man of numbers, right? Yeah. Obviously, COVID was a huge thing. What did you think about the percentage of people that can contract COVID in comparison to getting the vaccine because of the vaccine mandate, how it's affected city agency workers, just like John himself? He left over the vaccine mandate. What do you think about the numbers of COVID in relation to the vaccine mandate?
That I haven't studied, and if I'd be able to give you a better answer if I did study it. Okay, all I know is that the NYPD fired a lot of cops. I don't know the exact numbers. I'm not, completely familiar with this. All right, and John, you guys probably know more than me. Okay, and as crime was rising, none of those, I don't think any of those cops were rehired, unless if you want to correct me.
They rehired some people, but they made them reapply, and they had them sign a waiver to give away their civil service rights, which the NYPD can't tell you what that means. And they also had to sign a waiver that they were not entitled to back pay. So, obviously,
We're always pro-union progressives when it comes to the cops. There's the employees. You got to be. What is the beginning pay for a cop? 26 years, 30 a year? I don't remember the exact number.
Now I think they're starting out at like 58,000 or something like that.
50. Let's say it's $58,000. How much are they making after taxes?
Oh my God! In New York City,
25.
I would think even less, probably. Yeah, probably 20.
All right. Okay, it's not for the job that they do and the abuse that they have to put up with, and they're not even allowed to subdue a possible suspect the way that they used to. That's why you have to see all of these fist fights, because cops can't use certain techniques that they used in the past. And I know that the Manhattan District Attorney is hoping that they slip up, right, so that he can prosecute them, or the Bronx District Attorney, whatever. These guys, I don't. They have to love what they're doing to do what they're doing. And it's a shame that, these guys are so despised, are so ridiculed. It really is. It's really a shame, because these are the people that are protecting us. Now, some of them do the dumb things, as we all have done dumb things. Okay, we get that. But what happens is you get this progressive city council. If one guy does something wrong, it becomes magnified that it's a big thing going on. It's a vast conspiracy. It's a vast this. It's an institutionalized problem. It isn't.
So, Sam, we make you Mayor Sam Antar. What
I
are the
wouldn't want this shit. I am just going to fade away as time goes on and take pictures of sunset, feed the geese, and every once in a while have fun with the bike pros by taking pictures of empty bike lanes.
Well, listen, we don't. You don't have to run. You don't even have to do. You don't even have to take the job. But if you did, what would be the first couple of things that you would go after?
I hire a professional police commissioner, because the economic fabric of New York is based upon an effective police force. If you don't have an effective police force, you're nothing. Okay, and this police department, during the best and worst of times, is bailed out New York City. And the first thing I would do would be that I would make sure that the right investments went into the police department. I'm not going to be like aggressive, that money solves everything. That the value, make sure that the money is spent smartly on training, etc., and also to advocate for changes in certain laws that are really unfair to the police. That's the first thing that I would do. The second thing that I would do is, and I just haven't had enough time, is to look at the nonprofit industrial complex that's going on, and investigate it as a white collar crime investigation. That's what I would do during the second thing. The third thing I would do is I get rid of this crazy sanctuary city thing. We're all pro immigrant. My grandparents came here as immigrants, but that doesn't mean you let people in without even screening them, without even vaccination. I mean, we have a huge country here. Why do they have to come to New York? If you want to let these people in without being vetted, put them into a certain area of the country where they're not interacting with the rest of us and putting the rest of us in danger. Why can't they do that? I said today, with what's going on, like there was these protests today. It says Hamas might be losing the war with Israel, but they successfully invaded the United States of America, and so have millions of people coming across the border. Okay, we need to have some kind of control at the border. We need to be able to say no when no is no. Don't forget that the waves of immigration that we experienced in the early 20th century, in the 1920s, that was legal immigration. And even then, because I remember doing a term paper during the olden days when dinosaurs roamed the earth at Baruch College when I was in college. And I think it was on Ellis Island, I think like 1 in 4, 1 in 5 people were turned down when they came into this country. They were sent back for various reasons, from disease or whatever. So when they talk about immigration, that the country is benefit, of course the country is benefit. And when we had those waves of immigration, that was our policy to let them in. Now we have a law, and we have the administration of policy that runs counter to the law, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's interesting, right? Because you're a man of numbers, and I'm fascinated by this. So John had asked you if you were mayor, what would be some of the things that you do? So John and I both are retirement. Our pension really affects us at this point. And we talk about people that are up and coming. They're about to retire. They're going to get pensions. We speak to people every day. They best out, resign, they retire. So if you were in charge of the pension, how would you invest the pension as it is right now? How would you make the pension much more sustainable and substantial than what's going on with Brad Lander as we speak?
A fiduciary duty means that you owe a duty to the people whose money you're investing to maximize their returns. Okay, period. It doesn't mean this political goal or that political goal or some long-term goal from 100 years from now that may or may not happen. Okay, what it does mean, you have to maximize people's returns to ensure that they get the retirement that they're supposed to get, period. Okay, there should be no politics when it comes to people's investments, pension funds, and also no politics when it comes to crime. A victim is a victim, an assailant is an assailant, a retiree is a retiree, period. But it seems that this whole world is upside down, that there's no more order. Everything is being challenged. Now, challenging is okay, but there are certain, inalienable facts. Thou shalt manage people's pensions. It was the 11th commandment. You remember Moses went down the mountain and he dropped those 5 commandments? Was it Mel Brooks' movie? I forget, was it 10 commandments? That thou shalt not mismanage people's pension money. Thou shalt stop criminals. Thou shalt have empathy for victims. Those are 3 of the 5 or 10 that are not there.
I love it. Sam, do we do anything that before we let you go? I got one question, and then we'll start to wrap it up. What do you think? Like we were just talking about immigration. What do you think the influx of migrants? How has it changed the landscape of Manhattan, in your opinion?
Terribly, terribly. Now, some of them are great. Don't get me wrong. Some of them I actually admire for their hard work. They're going to work every day. They're working hard, even though they ride on sidewalks because I yell at them anyway. But unlike the regular Americans that ride on sidewalks, at least these guys never curse back. They just don't understand what I'm saying. Maybe I don't know. But every crime. All right. Let's give the benefit of the doubt. Okay. Let's say migrants are responsible for a smaller percentage of crime per capita than the rest of the population. That still means that there's additional crimes because the migrants are here. Okay. So put aside one thing I learned. Okay. There's numbers and also there's empathy. That has nothing to do with the numbers. Put aside, let's say 2 out of every 10 people that lived here commit a crime, but only 1 out of 10 migrants. Great, very good. I don't want that one additional crime for those 10 migrants that are here illegally. Okay, because that's one additional dead body, one additional person that's been robbed, one additional person that's been raped, one additional person that's been embezzled, whatever you want to call it. I don't want it, period.
All right, listen, Sam, I think your story is fascinating, and I love the fact that you own up to it. You even referred to me as convicted felon. You own up to it. You obviously very savvy, and you have an understanding of numbers that I'm fascinated by. That I can't even comprehend at this point right now. It's just not my wheelhouse.
I'll tell you what bothers me. I had after Crazy Eddie's, and again, you learn it's not like a 2-hour movie. Everything is a process. Okay, you don't have that moment where I see the light. That doesn't happen in real life, right? And as I'm working with the feds, we start developing a relationship. And as the relationship is about to terminate officially, the relationship goes on. And I had this deep respect for the people that initially tried to put me in prison that I was working with. I don't see that caliber of professionalism today in the leadership in New York, period. I don't see it. If it's anything, it's me honoring the professionalism of the people, the heroism in putting Eddie in prison and stopping me from being bigger than Bernie Madoff. Okay, if anything, this is what I'm doing now is a reflection of my respect for them, because these guys would stand. In fact, one of these guys even follows me on Twitter.
Hey, Sam, listen, we agree with you because John and I, we support on this podcast. We are huge supporters of the rank and file, but we're not supporting the leadership right now because they lack integrity. They're weak. They're inept,
Right.
and they're very
We're
self-serving.
pro-cop. We're not anti-cop, but the leadership, yeah. If you install puppets, I'm not gonna worship the puppet that's ordered, that makes your schedule or tells you what to do. These are puppets. That's all they are, is puppets, and they're a freak show. Every single one of them. You show
Agreed.
me one. You show me one that I can name that's good. I'll say it right here now. You can't figure out one. Okay, thank you.
No, it's right at this point, it's non-existent. Honestly, it really is. Sam, like I said, it's fascinating. I at this point we're a little bit more than an hour and a half into it. I want to thank you for coming on the show
Yeah,
and
take
being
as
so
long as you like.
upfront. I love that you're humorous on Twitter. I really appreciate it.
The more
I-
you keep this felon off the streets, the less likely it is that I might become a recidivist.
Well, I got a question for you. Are you going to have any more riddles coming up?
It depends. I have fun. It depends. You know what it is? It's my mood of the day and what's going on during the day. It really is. Twitter for me is fun. People take it seriously. How come you said this? Why don't you write it? What the fuck? This is fucking Twitter over here. This X, whatever you want to call it. It's not my fucking job. Okay? I do more research than Mark Levine with his staff of 58. I know more about crime than he does. He's got 58 people, a $5 million payroll doing this crap. And Jumani
That
Williams,
sounds fair.
whatever. I got it, whatever. I do what I do because I can. You don't like what I'm saying on Twitter? Fuck you. Just do whatever the hell you want to do. That's my attitude.
Yeah, no, I agree. Listen, it's a public sphere. Like, that's how I use it. I just use it to voice.
For me, it's fun.
You don't like it?
Actually, I'll tell you what. When I first started using Twitter, was around 2007 or 8. I was using it to quit smoking. Okay, believe it or not. I eventually quit smoking. No thanks to Twitter, thanks to that other medication that they use, the one that makes you lose the desire to smoke. Chantix. Chantix made me quit smoking. But Twitter was the start. So when I tell you, I'm not getting paid for it. Yeah, I do get $20 a month from Elon Musk because I have a blue account and I get a share of the advertising. And that $20 a month is very, very helpful to get me maybe 2 lattes from Starbucks or 3. Yeah, I feel so rich. So Mark Levine, he was attacking me. Oh, you paid for Twitter. I said, I don't. They give me more money than Matt Borough president. He's attacking me. You paid for Twitter. I get more money than they give me, and I don't give a shit. So what I'm paying? You don't like it? You're getting paid for being an asshole, instead of solving problems. All you do is you incite and you divide. That's Jumani Williams, incite and divide. Mark Levine, incite and divide. Alan Bragg, he's just a phony and lie, etc. And I can't say that. Brad Lander, incite and divide.
Absolutely, that's what they did. Then
yeah, I'm a firm believer in the long game, and I know, and it's just a hope. I can't prove it. Whatever. History's going to look down on them eventually.
Oh, 100%, without a doubt. I mean, they just don't see it right now because they have yes men around them, and they're in the wheel of power.
Right.
So they have the entire power structure. They look at all these regular people that make them look like fools every day. Like you said, they have staff, millions of dollars.
That's why they won't be successful. See, me as a criminal, I try to take all of those risks into account. That's why I was successful for so long. Okay, these guys, they don't understand the risks that they are taking now, the things that they are doing now, how it's going to affect in the future. They don't understand it. They think that they think that what did they used to call Gotti with the suit? I forgot what they called him.
Teflon Don.
No, what?
The Teflon Don.
Teflon. They think they're Teflon. They're not Teflon. And the fact is, I used to think that these people were. I owe them no respect because they don't give us respect. So if I'm going to go after them, I don't give a shit what I say, as long as I don't violate Twitter's rules, and I'm going to say it and try to do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, and they fear regular people just giving their opinion. Their narratives get debunked with an opinion. Like you said, you're not even spending much time.
Yeah, but I do notice that what we are doing, we're picking up a lot of steam, And a lot of people, I noticed that their timelines are filled with people I don't even know, they don't even follow me, that are making the same arguments. And some of the people that are following Razor, which is another,
Yeah, raise a
whatever,
chowdery.
and right, Charlie, and myself, they're starting to make up their own charts and going after them.
Yep.
So, and I'm glad. So we are starting to have impact. Mark Levine is mostly retreated to the threads, which really sucks. I have threads. You can't even look up. It is totally whatever. He has got his little own echo chamber there. And and they are some of these guys are posting less. I'd rather them post more, so I have more. It makes my day full, so I can find things to to have fun with. But the people are starting to wake up. My problem is they woke up when Giuliani, when he was saying, no, I really he's a little bit off now. Okay, woke up in 1992, I think it was, after Dinkins, but then they fall asleep. And this time when they wake up, I hope they don't, we can keep them up and give them insomnia so that they never fall asleep.
Well, you know what, Sam, what I think is interesting about what's going on right now is people like you and me and John, we've now formed a network because of what's going on right now. We probably wouldn't have never connected, but because things are so upside down right now we're all connected. All different walks of life are just tired of the way life is going right now. We want
By
things
the
back
way,
to
I'll tell you
societal
the way
norm.
life is.
Exact common sense, right? Common sense.
Common sense. It's all
So,
about common sense.
listen, Sam, again,
The problem is today, and that happens a lot, people like to label or categorize people. Bill Maher, who I really love, I watch him. He used to be very far left. He's still left, which is okay. But he doesn't care who he steps on the left or the right to make his points. And he's very attuned to it. He's also very attuned to this stuff, whatever. Okay. He did a thing where he said that most Democrats don't believe in gun control. So in other words, my point is you can't label people based upon their demographic group or just because they have a set of beliefs that's contrary to yours. There's some things that I agree with the left on. I agree with transgender rights, but I don't agree that they should be competing in certain sports. Let them have their own category. I agree with a lot of things on the left, but that doesn't make me into MAGA or right. First of all, I don't like Donald Trump. You might like him, good, whatever, but I don't like him. Okay, he wouldn't be my choice for president. In fact, I think I'm just going to write John McCarry in as my candidate this time around. Anyway, but presently, yeah. So, we don't have to agree on everything. And that's one thing that I find that is less tolerant of on the left, that we all have to fit into this category, which is ridiculous. That's not the equality that we were looking for. Is it equality or equity? We're supposed to be equality, not equity. In other words, equality of opportunity. That's what made America great.
Absolutely. I always say, Jordan Peterson said it. He said the individual is the ultimate minority, right? And I
Yes.
firmly believe that because everybody's a one-on-one. Everybody, to try to put people in a
And there are idiots on both sides. I'm not trying to be both sided, but as well as I do, there are idiots on both sides. Okay.
Absolutely.
And the problem is the media focuses on the idiots on each side. MSNBC will focus on the idiots on the right. Fox will focus on the idiots on the left. And the general reasonable voices like ourselves, which some people will disagree with, which is fine. Okay. We get crowded out. For some reason, it's not exciting. It doesn't get the ratings. It doesn't get the thrill, the push. It's
well,
ridiculous.
I always say it because it's not sexy. Sexy sells,
Not sexy.
right? It's sexy. It's sexy to have opposition, right, on both
You'd
ends.
be sexier if you would be sexier if you were a felon. Just take from my experience.
Listen, again, Sam.
Women love dangerous men. The preponderance of them.
The preponderance. Again, Sam, I want to thank you for taking the time out. It's almost 2 hours here. You gave a lot of valuable information. Honestly, I learned a lot from you, just thinking about numbers. And what you said, the biggest takeaway I have, and I'm going to take this with me, because I like to read, is that when you read something, you're really reading between the lines, and you're looking below the surface, and you're looking for those silver linings. So I really took that away, and I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to have you, Sam.
Let me just finish one point. Everything you read, okay, in the official statistics is one way or another a press release when it comes down to it. They are trying to guide you. Now, I'm not saying that there's some good stuff out there. There is some good stuff out there. But in general, okay, politicians want the numbers to reflect their agendas. And so do public officials that are not elected, unelected public officials. So always, what I would say is trust is a professional hazard that will destroy you, will ruin you. This is what when I used to teach the feds. Okay, what you do, you should it should be don't trust and just verify. Verify, verify, verify. That doesn't mean that you should be paranoid in every aspect of your life because then nobody will socialize you. I'm talking about a professional paranoia you need to have. That's what you need to have. That's what people need to have. As citizens, they need to have some healthy dose of paranoia. And I don't see that. It's called unexamined acceptance. A guy watches MSNBC. MSNBC said it. Unexamined acceptance. That must be true. A guy watches Fox. Unexamined acceptance. That means Fox must be true. Now, I'm not saying one is more truthful and one is. I'm just using it as examples. People want to be led. People want to be led. They want. Most people are followers, and that's what the problem is. People have to start learning to think independently. We're not teaching people that. We're just brainwashing people. No this, no this, no this, no this, this, no this. That's not the way. That's not the way this country is going to progress. Take it from me that the way that people are being groomed today, okay, you're making a paradise for criminals. I will tell you now, the present progressive wing of the city council, the progressive caucus, some of the leadership in the NYPD, Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine, and probably a couple of others, and Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Brooks. I focus on Manhattan because that's where I live. Okay, they're a criminal's wet dream. That's what they are. What they are doing is everything a criminal would want a politician to do, and it's a shame. Take it from me, a guy that did crime and only stopped crime because he got caught. I'm not trying to make myself I'm not giving you a sermon about, I found God and all that shit, okay? Take it from me. And if you don't listen to me, you're going to pay for it, not me. I'm 67. I have more good years behind me than I have ahead of me.
Now, Sam, listen, I appreciate you taking the time out. It was great talking to you. We'd love to have you back. Any last words for the audience? Anything you want to get out before we go?
Well, I used to do 8-hour classes for the feds. I can talk for 8 hours. If you give me slides, I can even make it interesting, whatever you want to do. That was the training that went into being a criminal. You have to be talkative. You have to be engaging. You have to be likable. Remember, before you can lie to somebody as a criminal, they have to like you first. It breaks down all of the barriers. So for me, it's easy to talk.
No, so that's what I'm saying. Any
That's what
last
politicians do, right?
Yeah, I said any last words for the audience before we get out of here? We'd love to have you back on.
If you see a guy with a hat feeding the geese, you're allowed to stop by. I'll vouch for you with the geese who normally are very unfriendly creatures. Every goose along the west side of Manhattan knows me by first name. They even let me pet their goslings, which is something nobody they let do.
Hey, Sam, before we cut out of here, tell people where they could find you, how they could get in touch with you if they want to follow you and see some of the stuff that you uncover. And when it comes to numbers, tell people where they can find you.
Whitecollarfraud.com or whitecollarfraud.com/blog or Sam Antar at Twitter, at Sam Antar on Twitter. That's it. Just follow me. Hear what I have to say. You can agree or disagree with me. Listen. There's things that you guys post sometimes. If it's not. I don't have to agree with everything that you do. That doesn't make me respect you less. Well, it is what it is. We're all after the same thing. Unfortunately, there's a segment of the society that's not. They profess to be after the same thing, but they're not.
Yeah,
You're absolutely right.
Cloud chasing. So, all right. Listen, Sam, we love having you on, ladies and gentlemen. The great and powerful Sam Antar. Go to his blog, whitecollarfraud.com. I'm sure you're going to see your Google Analytics jump up after this episode, and you're going to see a lot of people come following you from the NYPD. So, we'd love to have you back on, and we'll be back at you.
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. but who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888-901-BLUE. That's 888-901-BLUE. That's all right.